I'm Harry, this is Battle Games in Middle-earth, and see that? Yeah, I'm going to have a crack at making it. Reading through The Shadow in the East, I've always been impressed by this awesome double-page spread with the temple, tower and armies of the East gathered in front. So I thought it's about time I tested out the building guide in this SBG supplement. I start by photocopying the templates to the size it suggests and get to work building the main building structure from 5mm foam board. They're 95mm long and 50mm tall, and I start carving away at one to make the front door. Making sure it's central, I'll come back to that later, I cut the door size out almost all the way from the foam and then carefully cut away all but the backing on one side. Then using bits of balsa wood I make a door and door frame and score lines in the wood to give that super realistic door effect model builders make. Now these fiddly bastards are the photocopied window templates. I glue them to cornflake boxes and then tried about a dozen ways of cutting them out before I found something small enough to actually use. I used my girlfriend's nail scissors. Win. Thanks, Louise. It looks like a disaster zone, but the actual decorations look half decent for cornflake card. Then on to correcting the first of my errors. Once I started gluing the building walls together, I realised the door wasn't central. Yet again, it's because when I originally measured it, I didn't account for the width of the walls when I've glued it all together. So, after a painful period of time trimming the walls, accompanied by some equally painful attempts at the ancient Easterling art of karaoke, the building was ready. But now it was time to crack out the big guns. This is an enormous bit of 10mm foam board I ordered off eBay. They came in packs of 5, which I turned into the base of the temple. I cut out 3 squares, adding an extra 2cm width each time to allow for that staircase vibe we've got going on. With lots of poking of my building with a ruler to check it's in the exact centre, I stuck that down with PVA glue just like everything else. I followed that by cutting some little toy soldier sized stairs out of the main temple base to emphasise the front of the building, and then the process began on adding the next floor. This is just another 150mm square of 5mm foam board glued in place on top. But to build the slanting roofs, I go back to my fiddly templates. Using the big slanty one, yes, that is the technical term, I cut 2 just shapes out of foam board which cleverly fit together to make a cross the same size as the base for the floor I just built. From there I use hot glue to stick more cornflake boxes to the top of this cross pattern to create the base for the shingles on the slanted roof. I did try PVA for these bits, but it was just so much quicker using hot glue, even if I did get lots of strings of the stuff all over my hands. You can also see that I wasn't particularly careful with the shapes or the gluing here, confident in the knowledge that I'd be covering it up with lots of pretty fake tiles later on in the process. With that in mind, I cut out more bits of foam board of 45mm by 75mm, and I created a tower to protrude from the centre of the wonky array of cornflake box. Then, with increasing frustration, I cut out tiny arrow slits for the tower, getting dangerously low on cornflake boxes, but still making use of an otherwise wasted material. It's fiddly as all hell, but by gum is it going to help a small sapling's worth of tree go a little bit further for that environment. Then, with only battle streams in Middle-earth and beer as company, I get to work on the most horrendous thing I've ever attempted: cutting out hundreds of tiles in strips of card. Not for the faint-hearted. Darkness took me, and every shingle took as long as a life age of the earth. And there it is, 5 hours work. If I was paid minimum wage for just the shingles, I could have bought something good that wasn't slathered with filler, but onwards and onto the structure of the tower. The guide calls for balsa wood for the base to make wood effects easier, so I cut a square bit out, which goes on top of some fruit and fibre. Yes, I ran out of cornflakes boxes. I score some wood effect lines in with a pencil and then cut a trapdoor hole out, spin the bit of wood around so the grain is going in a different direction, then glue it back into the hole. I make the edges of the trapdoor with a little bit of card, yes, it's another cereal box, and then using one single link from a cheap necklace I got at a market years ago, I make a tiny little handle for the door. It works perfectly, and cutely, I might add. Next, with some lengths of balsa wood, I start making out enough pillars to prop the temple up. I think round dowel may look better, but I haven't yet found a use for this balsa I picked up at a model train shop a while ago, so it seemed like a great chance to use it. Now we're moving on to the next fiddly bit. Using lengths of wood similar in width to matchsticks, I start building the balcony for the platform. Finally, a use for the insane number of Easterling archers you get in a box set. They can shoot off this balcony. To make it, I mark out the width of the wood I'm using and then chop out tiny bits of the base to help give it a bit more surface to stick to. Once they'd had the time to dry, I use some super glue to glue the railings in place, as well as adding a bit of extra sturdiness to the PVA joints for those balusters. Once I glued it all in place, I thought it needed something to add a little bit more depth to the platform. To be honest, it looked very much like a flat bit of card with a bit of balsa wood on it. Probably because that's exactly what it is. But to solve that, I glued lollipop stick widths of balsa wood to the edges to give it a little bit of an overhang and just hide those joints a bit. Then it's onto the pinnacle of the tower to shelter those precious Easterling archers when it rains. This is basically a repeat of the steps I used to make the main roof, but just on a tiny scale. I cut out a structure from foam board, hot glue more cereal box shingles in place, crunchy nut clusters if you must know, and then cut out another fiddly decoration from the templates in the book and prop it on some wooden dowel. Voila! Here's the complete temple before painting. It definitely looks decent, if a little ramshackle, and I do think the shingles could be a bit better, but short of spending even longer on it, or buying something in to replace the arduous process, I think this is as good as I was willing to make it. Then, all that's left is to paint it. With a mix of black, poster paint, PVA and filler, I do an undercoat to give it a little more strength and some texture too. I then use Army Painter brown and red spray paints to undercoat the building and roofs respectively before tackling the stone base with a bit of grey house paint. With some yellowy browns and tan colours from GW and other paint ranges, I ended up painting most of the walls and wooden areas before dry brushing the tiles in a terracotta style brown. That's bestial brown to you classic GW painters. With the final details picked out in bronze and brassy colours, I also returned to the wooden planks to give them a mishmash of brown, green and black washes, just to distinguish each individual plank. All that's left is to decorate with a few tufts and then to show off in a battle report of some sort. Who's up for Easterlings versus Rohan? Go on then. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss that one. Thanks for watching.